elasticity concepts in demand and supply, and introduction to consumer behavior. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, concept of demand and supply. Demand and supply basically are the main principles governing an economy, especially the free market economy. They are the forces that determine the economic decisions, the pricing of goods and services in a free market economy. The relationship between supply and demand results in many decisions, such as the price of an item, how many will be produced in order to allocate resources in the most effective and efficient way. So this unit is going to cover laws of demand and supply, determinants of demand and supply, the concepts of equilibrium in demand and supply, effects of changes in price on demand and supply, relationships between change in quantity demanded or supplied, and change in demand and supply. Then different types of demand and supply as well. So before discussing demand, what exactly do you think it means? Can somebody just tell me what they understand by demand? I'm sure this shouldn't be the first time you're hearing it. Can anyone give us an attempt? This is supposed to be an interactive class, please. Anyone? All right, so
Hello?
yeah.
So is the quantity of goods and service that the consumer is to buy in the market at a particular...
I can't hear you. Can you speak up a bit, please?
Is the quantity of goods and services a consumer is willing to buy at a particular price in the market?
The quantity of what?
Is the quantity of goods and services consumers is to buy in the market at a particular time, at a particular price. That's the demand.
Okay, nice attempt. Does anyone else has anything to say? Okay, moving on. Just so you know, I wouldn't be the only one talking in this class. I'm going to be calling names one by one. So if I call you, better be sure to have something to contribute.
Okay, can I say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Demand, it has to be the willingness it has to be attributed to the willingness of the buyer. So it is the quantity of goods or services that a given person is willing to purchase at a given price and at a particular period of time. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So from the example given here, to make it easier for you to comprehend, please, can you? So it's kind of noisy here. Jonathan, are you willing to give a contribution, or if not, you can mute yourself, please? All right. So For example, let's say there's a man called Michael, and he desires 20 boxes of chocolate. And he has the money enough to purchase the quantity he desires. Now, Michael's willingness to buy to buy 20 boxes of chocolate explains
Jonathan,
the
please
concept.
switch your phone. Listen now.
Mr. Jonathan, do you want to speak?
Please mute
You are now unmuted.
Sister.
You are now muted.
All right. So, like I was saying, let's take, for example, Michael desires 20 boxes of chocolate, and he has the money enough to purchase the quantity that he desires. Now, Michael's willingness to buy those 20 boxes of chocolate explains income of the consumer. All these are going to be discussed later on. The determinants of demand and all that. So demand schedule is basically a table that shows you the different quantities of a commodity which would be bought at various prices at a particular time. It shows the relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity of that commodity that be demanded. There are two different types of demand schedule. We have individual demand schedule and the market demand schedule. For the individual demand schedule, it's a table which shows the quantity of commodity which a consumer would purchase at various prices and at a particular time. So from the we have here, for example, this schedule shows the demand for tins of milk for Mrs. Nelson. So it shows the different prices of tins of milk and the quantity demanded per week. So at price 100, the quantity demanded was 30 number of tins, and at price 90 naira, the quantity demanded increased to 40, and at price 80, it increased to 50. If you notice, as the price is reducing, the quantity demanded is increasing, which is the law of demand. We'll get to that shortly. So for market demand schedule is a table which shows the quantities of a commodity which all consumers of that commodity are willing to buy at various prices at a particular period of time. It shows the total demand of different buyers of the commodity, which in this case is tins of milk in the market. So from the table, you can see price per week, quantity demanded by Mrs. Obi, Mrs. Angela, and Mrs. Daniels, and their total quantity demanded per milk. So from the table, it can be observed that as the price of the milk falls, the consumers are willing to buy more of it, and vice versa, which is basically what the law of demand states. So moving on to demand curve. The demand curve illustrates the relationship between the price and quantity demanded. So the price is represented by the vertical axis, which is where the price is located, and while the quantity is represented by the horizontal axis. In the graph, you will notice that the curve slopes downwards from left to right. And the reason for this is because of the inverse relationship between the quantity and price demanded, which means that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Like I said before, that is the law of demand. And you can see that the demand and supply curve meets at a middle, and that middle is when the demand and supply curve is at equilibrium, which we are going to get to at some point as well. So that is all about demand. Moving on to supply. So having understood the concept of demand, we'll now move further to the concept of supply. Now, in economics, supply is said to be the quantity of a commodity suppliers are willing to produce and supply to the market at a particular price within a specific time frame. Now, if you remember, that of the demand was talking all about the consumers, how much the quantity of a commodity the consumers are willing and able to buy at any given price. Meanwhile, for supply is now talking about the quantity of a commodity suppliers. Demand talks about consumers, while supply talks about suppliers. Note the difference. So supply is said to be the quantity of a commodity suppliers are willing to produce to the market at a particular price within a specific time frame. Now, supply can also relate to the amount of goods available to consumers depending on the price of the commodity. Supply is a framework that can be used to analyze the behavior of producers or suppliers in an economy in relation to the given quantities of goods or services which they are willing to supply to the market. Supply is subjected to a given prevailing price and time. So every single thing here is all talking about price. So basically, demand and supply plays a huge role in pricing. So for any supplier to be able to supply his or her commodities to the market, they have to pay. Supply is subjected to a given prevailing price at a particular time. So if the price is constant at a particular time, supply then portrays a positive relationship between prices. So basically, if the price is good, the suppliers will definitely supply because producers or sellers are willing to supply or sell at greater quantities, at higher quantities, at greater prices. So for the supply curve as well, the price is represented, the vertical axis represents the price, while the horizontal axis represents the quantity. And the The graph shows the relationship between the price of a product and the quantity of the product that the supplier is willing and is able to offer to the market. The vertical axis measures the product price, like I said, and the horizontal axis measures the quantity of product supplied. The supply curve slope rises from upward, from left to right, because as the number of commodities supplied in the market increases, so will the price increase as well. There are different factors that influence supply of products. It can also be the price of the products, government policies, cost of production, etc. So that basically explains supply and demand. So now we're going to talk about the law of demand, which I've been dropping hints before we go here. So explain the law of demand with this example below. For example, Peter sells a pack of biscuits for 10 naira. At this price level, he sells about 1,000 naira per week, earning up to 4,000 naira. However, over the last 1 week, consumer demand for Peter's pack of biscuits has declined. So he decides to lower the price at 8 naira per pack. Now, the demand for the packs of biscuits automatically increases. Why? Due to the new lower price, and the quantity demanded almost doubles. At this price, Peter sells about 2,000 naira worth of biscuits per week, earning up to 8,000 naira monthly. Also, if he intends to increase the price in future, his demand rates will definitely decline. This simple example has explained in lay terms the concept of law of demand, which states that the higher the price of a commodity, the lower the demand of that product. The higher the price of a commodity, the lower the demand of that product. And the lower the price of a commodity, the higher the demand of the product. The law generally explains the choice of a consumer towards demand of a commodity when the price changes. If all the factors remain constant, the higher the price of a good, the lower the quantity demanded. This is typically consumer behavior. Typically what happens in our everyday life. If you have something that you always purchase, let's say bread, and the price of bread automatically increases. If it is above your income, you will definitely decide to just let it go. But the moment you hear, oh, bread's price has reduced, you will definitely go back and purchase it. So basically, economics is just generally what happens in our everyday life, basically. So the downward or negative slope of demand curve is an inverse relationship between price and quantity, expressing the law of demand. Obviously, when the price of goods and services increases, I'm talking about the law of demand table in the material. So obviously, when the price of goods and services increases from, say, so in this table now we have our prices here. We have price 1, price 2, and price 3. And on the horizontal axis, we have quantity 1, quantity 2, and quantity 3. So obviously, when the price of the goods and services increases from price 3 to price 2, when it increases from price 2, and then vice versa. So the graph basically shows the demand relationship between the price and the quantity of goods and services. Example, let's take, for example, there's a supplier and he is into corn crops. So for instance, corn crops are very much over the course of the year, and there is more corn than people would normally buy. So to reduce the excess supply, farmers need to lower the price of corn, and thus the price is reduced for everyone. This explains basically the law of supply, which states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. The law determines the quantity that will be sold at a particular price. So commodities are supplied more at a higher price due to the fact that selling a higher quantity at a higher price increases the supplier's revenue. Revenue basically is the supplier's turnover or profits at the end of sales. The supply curve shows an upward slope, unlike the demand curve. You can see the points from A, B, and C. I hope that we are kind of looking at the material because it's made available to you, even though we are not able to upload it, but you should be able to have it in your possession. So you're looking at the graph. You can see the points A, B, and C that are on the supply curve. They explain the direct relationship between quantity supplied and the price. So the quantity supplied at Q3, which is quantity 3, and the price and the price will be P3 at point C. The same thing goes for points A and points B. So that basically explains law of demand and supply. So we have different determinants of demand and supply. We're going to take a few points because we're running out of time already. Determinants of demand are those variables that influence the quantity of a commodity an individual consumer is willing to buy. So demand does not just happen. Basically, demand and supply does not just happen. There are determinants. There are natural determinants already there that influence the quantity of a commodity that is being bought by a consumer, or the quantity of commodities that is being supplied by a producer. So 1, the price of the commodity. The price of the commodity determines how much of it will be bought, which is basically the lower the price, the greater the quantity demanded, and vice versa. This means that a consumer will buy more commodities if there's a decrease in the price of that commodity, and buy less if the prices rises up. We also have the prices of other goods, which is changes in prices of other goods may influence the demand of a good. This is applicable to goods that have close substitutes and complementary goods. Substitute goods can be used in place of each other. You need to know the difference between substitute goods and complementary goods. Substitute goods can be used as those goods that can be used in place of each other. Examples of such goods are margarine and butter, tea and coffee, Bonvita and Ovaltine, or Milo. This means that the price of the substitute and the demand for the other good are closely related. So, for example, if the price of one good increases, the consumer will switch to the substitute. So, for example, if the price of margarine increases, what will the consumer do? They will switch to that of butter. So, just like I said, the prices of other goods influences the demand of another good. So, if let's use Bonvita and Ovaltine. So let's say the price of Bonvita rises, the demand for Ovaltine will also rise, and vice versa. Meanwhile, for complementary goods are goods that can be used together. Note the difference. Substitute goods are goods that can be used in place of each other. Meanwhile, complementary goods are goods that can be used together, such as car and petrol, bread and butter, tennis balls and rackets, etc. So a decrease in the price of one of the commodities will lead to an increase in the demand for it, and also to an increase in the demand of its complement. So this is because there's an inverse relationship between the price of one good and the demand for the other when the goods are complements. So these are the factors that determine demand. We also have taste and fashion. Taste and fashion basically explains a consumer's likes or prefers. So a consumer's and when there's an introduction of a new commodity in the market, consumers basically rush it. So there's an increase in demand of a commodity when it is introduced newly to the market. Also, consumers' income can affect the demand of a commodity. So an increase in a consumer's income increases that consumer's purchasing power, thereby increasing the quantity of a commodity demanded, and vice versa. You also have the size of the population, the government policy, weather and all that. The same thing applies to demand. The same thing applies to supply. So we also have price of the commodity as the determinant of supply.
You are married to Samir Khan, the son of Salama Khan, tonight with 2.5 million.
So you also have the determinants of supply, which are the price of the commodity, price of other commodities, cost of production, etc. For the price of the commodity, like I said earlier, the ultimate goal of a producer or a supplier is to maximize profits. Yeah. So the willingness of a supplier to supply higher quantities of commodities at a higher price is justified, because the producer wants to maximize profit to the fullest. So in other words, the higher the price of a commodity, the higher the quantity that will be supplied at the market, and vice versa. We also have the price of other commodities, which explains that an increase in the prices of other commodities will make the production of the commodity whose price has not risen relatively less attractive than it was before. So that means that the increase in the price of a particular commodity may push a producer to stop and reduce the production of other commodities and then shift to the one that has the higher price. For example, a producer of detergents who found out that there's an increase in the price of liquid soaps will shift from the production of detergents to liquid soaps. That's basically the explanation there. So for cost of production, changes in the prices of the factors of production affect supply. Factors of production here includes the raw materials, the the supplier will use to produce whatever he's producing. So if there's an increase in price of any of the factors of production or factor inputs, it will bring about increase in the cost of production. The resources which serve as inputs in the process of production are very, very important. So when they are scarce or expensive, less of such products or outputs will be available for sale. But when such resources are available and at cheap prices, more of those products will be produced and supplied. We have other factors like the government policy, state of technology, entry of new firms, weather condition. I expect you all read up because they are quite self-explanatory. So we have concept of equilibrium in demand and supply. By now, we should have like a small idea of what equilibrium in demand and supply means. So the economy is said to be at equilibrium when the supply and demand are equal. That is, when the supply function and demand function intersects or meets. That is where you say there has been an equilibrium. So equilibrium in the market occurs where there is a balance between the price and quantity demanded by buyers and the price and quantity offered by suppliers. When there is a balance between the price and quantity demanded by buyers and the price and quantity offered by suppliers, at the juncture where they meet, that is where equilibrium has, that is the theory of market equilibrium. So at this juncture, in economic terms, we can say that there has been an efficient allocation. We can say that efficient allocation has been achieved because the amount of goods being supplied is exactly the same amount of goods that the consumers will get the goods they are demanding, and suppliers will also sell all the goods that they have produced. Mr. Jonathan, please, you keep unmuting yourself. I do not know why. So, from the table here, we can simply explain the concept of equilibrium using this table here. So from the table, you have different prices, the quantity demanded, and the quantity supplied. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prices here: 10 naira, 8 naira, 6 naira, 4 naira, and 2 naira. Then we have the table quantity demanded and another table quantity supplied. So from when the price is 10 naira, the quantity demanded is 30 units and the quantity supplied is 200 units. When the price reduces to 8 naira, the quantity demanded will increase to 50 units and supplied will reduce to 150 units. You can see the relationship. As the price is reducing, the quantity the quantity demanded is increasing and the quantity supplied is reducing. At 6 naira, the quantity demanded increases to 100 units, and at 6 naira, the quantity supplied reduces to 100 units. At 4 naira, the quantity demanded increases to 150 units, and at same 4 naira, its quantity supplied reduces to 50 units. Finally, at 2 naira, the quantity demanded increases to 200 units, and the quantity supplied reduced to 30 units. So from this table now, you can see that there has been an equilibrium, and it occurred at which price? Price 6 naira. Because at price 6 naira, the quantity demanded was 100 units, and the same 100 units was the quantity supplied. So that explains concept of equilibrium. So moving on to change in demand and the change in quantity demanded. In economics, there's a term which is the change in demand, and is different from the change in quantity demanded. There are two theories. So the terms change in quantity demanded and change in demand, they are two different concepts. Like I said, change in demand can be defined as an increase or decrease in demand of the product due to the different factors affecting the demand, while keeping price at constant. I'm going to take it again. Change in demand can be defined as an increase or decrease in demand of a product due to the different factors that are affecting that demand, while still keeping price at constant. Now, in this concept now, the price is constant. The only thing that is affecting the change in demand is as a result of the factors affecting the demand. The price is still constant at this point. The reason why economics refers to the term change in demand as increase or decrease in demand is because they are more concerned with the functional relationship between demand and supply, demand and price, than with the particular quantity that is demanded at any one moment. If the change in demand is due to some factors other than the taste, income, prices of other goods, like we discussed earlier, it is known as the increase or decrease in the demand, as the case may be. So changes in demand are measured by shifts in the demand curve. For instance, when a consumer's income increases, that means that they will now buy at large quantities. So just all you should take out from change in demand is that it is defined as an increase or decrease in demand of a product due to the different factors affecting demand. And factors affecting demand are what we just discussed initially, which is the consumer income, the price of the goods, price of other goods, and all that, while keeping the price constant. Remember that the price is constant at this point. So, which I was going to use consumer's income as an example. So, if a consumer's income increases, the consumer is going to buy a product at larger quantities, with the price still remaining constant, and vice versa if his income reduces. So therefore, the entire demand schedule will change due to a shift in other factors on which the demand of a commodity depends, other than the price of the commodity. So change in demand, I'm going to say it again, is affected by the factors. The concept of change in demand is affected by the factors affecting demand, while keeping the price of that product constant. Using this table, for example, we have a price of a particular commodity at 20 naira, and this price is constant. So consumer's income becomes, let's say, a consumer named Peter. and a product, say sugar. So the price of sugar is constant at 20 naira, and Peter earns 20,000 naira. As Peter earns 20,000 naira, he demanded for 1,000 units of sugar. Now, sugar's price is still 20 naira, and Peter's income reduces to 16,000 naira monthly. Now, as his income has reduced now, the quantity demanded reduced to 800 units. At the same 20 naira constant price, his income automatically increases to 24,000 naira. And what happens? His demand for sugar increases to 1,200 units. So you see, with this concept now, the price is still constant at 20 naira. So the only thing affecting the demand here is Peter's income. I hope that is clear. Is that clear? I need a response, please.
Yes, it is. Yes,
You are now unmuted.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay. All right. So that basically explains change in demand. For change in quantity demanded, so from the table above, we've already explained this. So as shown in the diagram above, change in demand can either be an increase or decrease. In the graphical representation of the case of increase in demand, the curve shifts to the right, while in case of decrease in demand, the demand curve shifts to the left of the demand curve. Please hold on. For change in quantity demanded, it refers to a movement along the demand curve, which is caused by a change in price. So now you know the difference. The concept change in demand is caused by factors affecting or determining the demand, but why the price is constant. But for change in quantity demanded, it refers now the price is acted under the change in quantity demanded. So here it refers to a movement along the demand curve, which is caused only by a change in price. So in this case, the demand curve doesn't move, rather, we move along the existing demand curve. Why changes in demand are measured by shift in demand curve. The time change in quantity demanded can also refer to an expansion or contraction of demand. Why change in demand means increase or decrease in demand, basically. So expansion or contraction of demand. For example, the variations in the quantities demand, this is under changes in quantity demanded. It can be defined as the expansion and contraction of demand, and it also is affected by the price of a commodity. The variations in the quantities demanded of a product with change in its price, while other factors are at constant, are termed as expansion or contraction of demand. Note the difference. In this case now, what is constant are the factors of demand. What is changing here is the price. Meanwhile, for the other one, which is change in demand, the price is what is constant, and the factors of demand are what changes. So let's know the difference. The expansion of demand refers to the period when quantity demanded is small because of the fall in prices of a product. However, contraction of demand takes place when the quantity demanded is less due to the price of a product. So that basically explains changes in demand, the concept of changes in demand, and the concept of changes in quantity demanded. So same with changes in supply and quantity supplied. Change in supply refers to the increase or decrease in the quantity of a commodity supplied due to the factors affecting supply, whilst the price of the commodity remains constant, still the same thing. It's just this time around, I'm talking all about supply instead of demand. And change in quantity supplied can be referred to as the increase or decrease in the quantity of a commodity supplied as a result of change in the price now. Now what is changing now is the price, change in price of the commodity, while other factors remain constant. So it's good we note the difference. That explains changes in supply and changes in quantity supplied. So we have different types of demand. It's past our time already, so I would implore all of you to read up on the different types of demand. They are all quite self-explanatory. The material has made it extremely easy to understand. Also, the different types of supply as well. So that is that for study session 1. I'd also like that you read up on elasticity of demand and supply, elasticity concepts, the different types of elasticity of demand, how the factors of demand and supply affect its elasticity. They are all here. And also consumer theory, the concept of consumer theory, the concept of utility, different types of utility, law of marginal returns, indifference curve, so on and so forth. Yeah, so it would be nice if you guys read up on it so that in our next class we'll just take some questions and just rush through it. So that's all I have to say for this class. It's now time for questions. If you have any questions, you're free to ask now before we end.
Okay.
I have a question, please.
Okay.
All right. From the class, you can see that I think most of what we're dealing with here are theories. Please, I want to ask, is there a situation where we're going to be perhaps applying it in the practical way, for example, maybe in dealing with numbers and statistics like that, for example, in that this demand supply curve, talking about price, quantity relationship, that's going to be, we are going to apply these principles in aspect of figures, not like destinations and the likes. They're going to be in
Yeah,
this situation.
definitely. Yeah, we're gonna take some calculations in our
Okay.
class next.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much. I want to ask, in this price determination, yes, the equilibrium will determine the price and the quantity demanded. How in the concept of how government gives price, the price of electricity, price of petrol, how will you talk about this in this aspect of using demand curve and supply curve to achieve equilibrium and determine price? Do they do that in the ministry, or without doing that, the effect that it can have? Thank you.
I don't think I understood your question.
Okay, in the reality, like have the demand curve and supply curve and the active equilibrium where they cross, from there we can talk about equilibrium price and quantity. I'm talking of a situation where the government must come on the increased price of electricity, increased price of petrol, to just give a given priorities or what?
Government policies is part of the. So, if the price of petrol is 50 naira and quantity demanded is equal to that, then there's an equilibrium. If I'm not even sure I really understood exactly what you asked, but